Hi ladies and gentlemen, this is Monica Lessie, and today I want to go ahead and do a video a little bit more about Judgment Day. The Golden Age, what they talk about, the end of days, or age of tribulations, the Kalkia, all of that stuff that a lot of times people refer to. And I kind of want to get you guys a little bit of understanding of what's going on. Also tie this into a little bit of like aliens, see where they fit into this concept. I want to take it from more of a Kabbalah point of view, because they have diagrams that I feel work really well for people's understanding, especially when it comes to consciousness. Also want to go ahead and talk things from like what exactly does it mean from the Golden Age. Also insert alchemy so you guys can see where that sits in the perspective, but at the same time show you where secret societies fit into this as well. And then hopefully when you understand this, it can give you guys a better understanding for like kind of like fusing everything together. Like alchemy is supposed to like take things that are separated and then put them back together again. For those who know the Oset and Osiris story, Osiris is supposed to be the being from the underground that was torn apart from Set. Set could be a principle or representation of the ego, an unbalanced ego. Set is more like your solar body, where Set actually tore that apart. So not to go too much into that story, you can see that that's kind of like an alchemy story, saying like a lot of times the knowledge in pieces has been spread out. And what happens is when you put them together again, instead of looking at the differences, you can actually see the similarities, and this can actually help you see things from a fuller perspective. Because I know a lot of times people get confused with the aliens, and then they get confused with New Age people, then the secret societies, and then they get with occultism, which is hidden, and then all these other spiritual truths. So I want to go ahead and just take this from an alchemical perspective of putting them all together to you, but then present it to you from a new way. So realize that when you're dealing about spirituality, not only in the Abrahamic spiritualities, which is associated with like Islam and Christianity and things like that, and Gnosticism and things of that nature, you must also realize that there are other spiritual groups also talk about this Judgment Day. Other groups such like the Buddha, what you could call the Zoroastrianism, the Norse mythology, like all of them talk about like similarities, and there's more, but I can't go into all of them because I was trying to put this together quickly and fast, and did just enough research so you guys can make you guys start to ponder. And what happens is you realize that there's always like this concept of the end of days from extent, or the age of the Kali Yuga, or the day when Christ returns, or things of that nature. So a lot of times you realize that it's always talking about, a judgment of the good and the bad. The souls will be like judged. And when you realize that, you said, okay, what does this basically mean? And is it true? So here I go. I want to go ahead and break it down from each spirituality so you can look at the similarities. So here I have Islam. And in Islam, they have a Day of Judgment, which precedes after the appearance of Al-Mahdi. And Al-Mahdi is kind of like one of their main prophets who's going to come back. Now, I have the name up there, but I'm not going to really try to pronounce it because I know I'm going to say it wrong. But there it is right there. And it's basically the Judgment Days, where the Ahmadi is going to appear on a white stallion. And this is going to be after 3 periods before the Day of Judgment. And then they have also a different name there. So you realize that even Islam, they have a Day of Judgment, and they also have a prophet coming back. A lot of you guys probably heard of the Christians. They always talk about the final internal judgment of God, of every nation. In Christianity, the end of times is depicted as a time of tribulation and precedes the second coming of Christ. In Hinduism, they have something called, in the end, is foretold of the Kalki, and it's a final incarnation of Vishnu, who descends on top of a white horse and brings the end of the current Kali Yuga, the Iron Age of destruction. So when you realize that, you say, okay, well, I see that they're all talking about the end of days and judgment. A lot of times they say the Christians, they also talk about the Christ coming on, I believe, on a white horse with 4 horsemen. And then here you're talking about Kalkia, who's an Hindu, which is in India. They're talking about the Kalkia, which is kind of like a prophet as well, and he's also going to be on a white horse. Then you say in Islam, they're talking about a white horse too. So you say, okay, that's interesting. But then we go into Buddhism, and Buddhism, they also predict that their teachings will be would be forgotten for 5,000 years and followed by turmoil. And what happened was their Maitreya is going to appear and rediscover the teachings of Brahma, and the ultimate destruction of the world will come through 7 suns. So you realize that, you see, Buddhism is saying that too. So you see that, like, if you look at Islam real quick, they're talking about there'll be 3 periods before the Day of Judgment. They're just talking about the 7 suns. And then here, you have here Kali Yuga, and I'm going to go ahead and do Kali Yuga too. And then you have here the Zoroastrianism, which is like a fire spirituality group, and they talk about a battle between the righteous and the wicked, followed by this time of turmoil on earth. And then what happens is they believe that their Messiah or their prophet is going to come as the final savior of mankind and bring about the resurrection of the end. So you see, they're talking about that too. And then even in Norse mythology, they talk about the end of days as described as, it looks like it says Ragnarök, and which the Norse calls the twilights of the gods, and it will be I can't read that. It'll be heralded by devastations, and this will be followed by a battle between the gods after the world will resurface new and fertile, and the surviving gods will meet. And then the new earth will be repopulated with 2 human survivors. So you realize that, you see that they're all kind of talking about different, you're going from the Norse, you're going from the Buddha, you're going from Hindu, you're going from Christianity, you're going from Islam, and there's a lot others. Since I didn't have enough room, I couldn't go ahead and fit them all, but you see that they're all talking about similar things, and they're all from all parts of the regions. Just like my video I did about Kundalini, they all have these world religions have this reoccurring concept of the snake goddess and things of that nature. And this is talking about the end. And when you're talking about Islam, they're talking about there's going to be basically a period of 3 periods. In the Kali Yuga, they said the 4th age is Kali Yuga. And for those who are not familiar with the Kali Yuga, that's basically the age of basically when things are going to change, and it's the Iron Age, and it's the age where things are going to be destroyed. So you realize that, you say, okay, well, there's definitely interesting similarities to this, and that they're all kind of talking about similar things, but they're all different, seeing it from their own perspective. So you have to realize that if you look at it like this, I have an analogy for you guys. So let's just say that I had 10 people all together, and then I gave them a huge trick. I showed them a huge flash of light, and I had a UFO appear and disappear real quick, and it did a weird cartwheel, and then it left. And then I said, okay, you guys had that experience. Now everyone go back to your little corner and write a book about it. So everyone wrote a little book about it, and they said, oh, one said it was a UFO. It did cartwheels. Another said it was a flash of light from divinity, and then it danced. One said what happened is it looked like a flying horse, and then it like did a loop-de-loop. So what happens is they all saw the same thing, or they all got revealed the same thing, but what happened is their description and telling the same thing is different. So a lot of times, it's not really about looking at the technicalities of what people are saying, because if you are doing that, no one's going to ever say the exact same things. Humans are unique, that we have our own free will and our own thoughts and our own consciousness and our own conditionings from our social backgrounds that make us explain things in our own terms. So instead of looking at things from differently, saying, my version of saying it's a UFO and a cartwheel is the truth. It wasn't a flying horse doing a loop-de-loop. It was a cartwheel, not a loop-de-loop. And then what happens when people fight over the loop-de-loop versus the cartwheel, it kind of doesn't really make sense, because they actually saw the same thing, right? The loop-de-loop, the cartwheel is the same thing. It's just your preference of how you want to say it. You have to realize that sometimes maybe that's what's happening. Maybe they're all having a similar experience, whether it be like revelations or someone told them, but they kind of told the story in their own version. And everyone knows that if you have, like, you're an artist and you had like a naked man and everyone had to draw a naked man, all the pictures are going to be different. We're not clones. We're not going to do the exact same thing. And sometimes you have to kind of ponder it. Maybe that's what's happening. People are kind of being told the same thing, but they have different perceptions of saying, or different definitions of saying the same thing. So instead of looking at the differences, because words is so limited, we're not telepathic yet, we should look at the similarities. So when you look at that, you say the similarities, they always talk about divine retributions against humankind through wars, natural disasters from angels and gods. They're always talking about coming of an avatar of some sort, and many others. Is it they call it the Comforter, and Christian is the Kalkia, and Hinduism, is it El-Mahdi? In Islam, is it Jesus? Is it Isa? Then they will talk about the false prophets. Because Matthew, he always says that there's going to be many false prophets, and they even said there's also going to be an antichrist. And then also, you always realize that they're always talking about certain rules that we have to follow. And these rules are in Kemet, they had the 42 rules of Ma'at. In Christianity, they had the 10 Commandments. In Islam, they had the Sharia. And in Buddha, they had the Eightfold Path. So you realize that they're kind of like they're all giving us their little rules, and they're all kind of telling us that, of some type of avatar, and then they're all talking about some type of destruction and a final judgment, and then talk about false prophets and people are going to be disiluded. But when you realize that, you have to look at, okay, well, let's look at the rules that they have. So here we have the Eightfold Path in Buddhism. It talks about, you have to have the right view, you have to have the right intentions, you have to have the right speak, action, livelihood, effort, concentration, and right mindfulness. So it's kind of talking about, you have to be careful of the way you look and view and speak to the world. We have the 42 laws of Ma'at, and here it says, honor virtue, I benefit with gratitude, I am peaceful, I am respected, I respected the property of others, I affirm that all life is sacred, I give offerings that are genuine, I live in truth, I regard all altars with respect. I speak with sincerity. I consume only my fair share. I offer words of good intent. It says, and it goes on, I relate in peace. I honor animals with reverence. So you look at that okay, well, let's look at just come at a couple of those 42 laws of Ma'at, and you're looking at the Eightfold Path. The words are different, but you kind of get the same. You kind of understand that they're saying that we got to be good people. We got to, invoke laughter. You got to be positive. Keep the energy up, And then we have here the 10 Commandments as well that actually, talks about being a good person. And then once again, there's, in Christianity, for example, they always talk about the 7 sins. And the 7 deadly sins, also known as the capital vices or cardinal sins, is a classification of vices, part of Christian ethics, that has been used since early Christian times to educate and instruct Christians concerning failed humanity's tendency to sin. In its currently recognized version, the sins are usually given as lust, gluttony, greed, sloth, worth, envy, and pride. Now, I'm not going to go into those because you guys can obviously know what they are. But seeing that, you see, the fact that they have to give us rules to tell us that we have to try to maintain a good positive energy or try to be good people. And then we have these stuff like lust, gluttony, greed, sloth, worth, envy, and pride. That we naturally have these good and bad characteristics within us. And you realizing that they when they have to give these rules to say be good and don't forget the days of the judgment's coming, they're kind of reminding us to keep our energy good. So here I have a person, and you always see this picture where a guy has an angel and a demon or a devil next to him, and one's telling him to do bad and one's telling him to be good. One's like, you should be good, one's saying bad. And basically that's good. I like this picture because it kind of says that we have both good and bad in us. We have both good and bad traits. And when you realize that, it's kind of reminding us that, we can become dark and we can become light. The Adam and Eve story says God gave you rules, but you broke them. But then yet you said you're deceived, but you still broke them. What happens is we still have darkness within us. Now, before I go any further, I have to go into the concept of introducing the tree of life. I always talk about this. I love talking about it because it breaks things down, and it also helps you guys see things visually without being so abstract. But, here's a diagram of the tree of life in Kabbalah. If you guys know, psychologist Carl Jung called the energy that travels on the path of this diagrams our collective unconsciousness. It is taught that the light from which all things come travels down from the top of the path to the bottom, the material plane. Each path represents different consciousness, a different reflection of light. So on the top, as you know, you have the trinity of you have Yehovah, but you also had Keter, Chokmah, and Binah. All the way at the top, all the way at the bottom here, you have Malkuth, and that's kind of like where we are. It's like in our, you could say like our chakras. You could say that's where we are in psychology. You could say that's where we are in Earth. You could say that's where our body is. And here I have, I show you guys this picture body. There's a tree of evolution, which is up, and then there's a tree of evolution, which is going down, and they look kind of like the same pattern. But what happened is one's going down, one's going up. One's going up to evolution is associated with the angels. One going down is Qulip, which is associated with beings that are very, very powerful, but they are quarantined from us just as much as we are quarantined from the angels. And Malkuth is where we are in the middle, where it connects. Right between where the guy's, we could say his legs are crossed, Malkuth. Now, that is interesting because you realize that you see that we're in the in-between state right now. We're in between the higher realms and the lower realms. Now, if we want to go a little bit higher to the higher realms, we're going to have to get rid of the darkness because beings that high don't have the darkness of hate and anger and jealousy and deceit in the higher world. They basically do the will of the all, which is, the upper world, and then they're kind of like service. That's why angels, they always associate them with being like God's messengers. They do His will. So He tells them what to do, and then they do it, and they don't complain about it. And the bottom is basically when you want like complete dissolution from the will of the all. You want to basically have will of yourself, and you basically just want to have your own freedom. So in a sick way, people could say, I want my own freedom. I want to do what I want. But they said, so the underworld's like, then if you want to like, do the pride, me, all that great stuff, then yeah, there is a place for you, but it's not being in accordance with a hierarchy. It's basically doing it with dissolution, which is associated with Malkuth, with Qulip, because we're in Malkuth. So here I have a picture, and I want to talk about the Golden Age, and I want to talk about the aliens. So I have here the Golden Age. The Golden Age is usually after the Age of Tribulations, the Kali Yuga, which many believe that that's where we're at now. This is the judgment. In other words, your energy body will determine where you will go. Will your body resonate with gold, which is Tabarif, or with material darker than lead, Qulip? This can also mean obtaining your solar body, which they talk in the Bible, Solomon, which means solar man. Both paths are leading back to the source. One is through evolution, the other is de-evolution. To evolve, you will have to transmute your body, mind, and spirit, which will take work. And this is where alchemy comes in. Alchemy helps with transmutation because we have become so material in our current state. We have to work to change our Qulip trait. So those traits of darkness is basically, darkness trying to pull us down Qulip. And what happens is we have to try to kind of like transmute that. And not just say, I'm going to try to be good, like really just transmute it. And that's where alchemy comes in. Now here's the alien part, because I know a lot of people are like excited about the aliens. But I said, they're still on Malkuth. And they are not more involved than many think. They think we are not going to make this transition, but they need Earth since this is their kingdom. Humans have a unique DNA that Earth needs. So if we do not evolve, they can't either. Some are manipulating humans. Others are genetically fusing our DNA with theirs via genetic engineering to make their race more superior. So I'm going to go ahead and explain that to you guys real quick. Let's go back up to the golden age. So I said here, you know, what happens is the golden age is supposed to happen after this age of Kali Yuga, which is this age of destruction and iron. And iron is like very heavy, heavy, heavy. So a lot of times people said, you know, 2012, we're going to go to the golden age. It's going to be beautiful. But we still have a lot of darkness in us. Golden age, you have to basically get rid of that. So if you still have pride, jealousy, anger, you're lying to yourself, you have, you know, you have dark feelings, which is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. You can't go in the golden age, because the golden age is basically when you want to turn your body to what that of the energy or frequency of gold, which is pure. So when you look at the diagram to the left, I have here where there's a cross. That's kind of like the kingdom. And that cross is associated with the 4 kingdoms that share Malkuth. There's the mineral kingdom, there is the plant kingdom, there's the animal kingdom, and then there's the human kingdom. And Taparith is right above there where you have that little circle. That's Taparith. And that's what they call in Hebrew beauty. You know, and Malkuth is called the kingdom because there's 4 kingdoms here, and that's why it's divided in 4. Humans are the ones that are less involved, and then the minerals is like the ones that are a little bit higher, and then it even gets into the cells and stuff. But what happens, we're kind of in a transitional state where we're sharing like Qliph, which is the lower world, which is a lot of times people can associate with hell, and then we have the higher world. So what happened is the judgment day is saying, you know, it's not going to be judgment by what you do and say. It's going to be judgment on your energy. So you can say, oh, I did this, I did this, I did that, but your energy tells us everything, and everything is recorded in your energy. So they'll, like, you know, in the rules of Ma'at, you know, Ma'at would kind of judge you by that of a feather and see if the tipping scales fall, where it goes. So that's basically what it's saying, like, when this whole golden age goes, you know, those who reside with the golden age will reside with the golden age. But that doesn't mean everyone's going to be residing with the golden age. Some are not. And what happens is that's why alchemy is here, because alchemy, like I said, they're here to heal you, because we become so material, we kind of forgot our, like my previous video, I said our mental body is messed up. We can't even, you know, there's so much information and people saying so much, there's just so much stuff people are saying that sometimes we can't even think straight. You know, people say, oh yeah, just think positive. But we have darkness in us, and it's just kind of the way it is. I mean, we have war, we have famine, it's just how it is. We have to kind of change our ways. And right now we're in Malkuth, which is a very dense area. And Qliph is like, come on down, we'll have a party down here. But then at the same time, it's kind of like the world of imagination where everything exists, demons, everything that you can think of. So it's up to you. Some people may like it down there, but it's still going to go back to the source. One's just evolving to the source, one's devolving. So that's what happens is you know, you have to realize that the judgment is which world you want to go, because right now we're kind of in between two. I know people are trying to say we're perfect, but we wouldn't have rules if we were perfect. The aliens, you know, basically, you know, they don't see this. They don't understand the upper worlds, and the Qliph is very much stronger than them. Like, they can't even bang with the Qliph. Like, there's no way. But they could tell you, oh, astral travel, but astral travel is still Malkuth. It doesn't go any higher than that. So there's going to be like change on all worlds, but it's kind of like basically where your energy body is. But the golden age is you kind of want to reside with gold. And that's what a lot of times people talk about Metonic gold and alchemy. They say, I got to change my body to gold. But it's not just your body. It's your mind, spirit, and body. So that's where that comes in. So when you realize that technically there's like kind of two forces working with you, you have the positive and you have the negative. You have good forces, you know, come on up. But then you have bad forces like, come on down to, you know, come on down to hell. It's going to be fun. You realize that there's always like two forces. And when you realize that, you realize that a lot of times people get confused with this whole secret society stuff. Why is there so many secrets? Why is there so many secrets? When you realize that we're kind of in a middle zone, where it's not good or it's not bad, and what happened is there's kind of like a game of show, like, you know, no one wants to show their cards, and people want to help, but you have to help in secrecy. And that's where you kind of get into the secret societies, because what happens is you have some beings who want to control, and then you have beings that want to actually help. And what happens is, okay, so if you know you can help people and you know that there's beings who are right now in control, you don't want to show them that you know some you're doing secret teachings, because what they do, they will do a crusade on you and destroy and basically kill anyone. And that's basically what happened in the past. They wanted everyone that was talking about these mystery schools, all the books, everything else. If you can't even say it, you can't talk about magic, you'll be burnt at the stake. Everything was destroyed. But that's when you had the mystery schools. So what happened is mystery schools started all the way up in ancient Egypt. And what happened is they realized that the place started getting a little bit more darker, a little bit more denser, and the salvation of humanity would have to be taught in secrets. So what happened is a lot of times these secret schools went into like different little sectors and had to divide, and that went into like Kabbalah and Gnosticism. Then you have like the Knight Templars, and then you have the Rosicrucian, you have the Freemasons, the Illuminatis. And so there's two different agents happening, basically. You have the agents that are trying to preserve it, they can come out and preserve this and give it to the people. And then you have the ones that want to control. And what happens is, if you know that there's a power, like let's just say right now, that's controlling everyone, you don't want to tell them that you're going to try to help humanity, because they're going to either make you look like the bad person, destroy everything, burn all your books, and then make you submit, and then probably even burn all your children. So there had to be a little bit of secret schools of knowledge that was usually associated with Hermetic. So a lot of times when you hear about ancient philosophy, you always heard of Melchizedek, or you hear of Thoth, or you heard of Mercury's, and then a lot of times people say, oh, it's the same person, and it's kind of like the same lineage, or the golden chain is being spread through these secret societies, so therefore the knowledge could be sent out. But then you had schools who were opposite, and what they did is they infiltrated the schools, and then they made it bad, and they say, oh, it's bad, and we're going to tell the truth, But if it's bad, usually what they did in the past, if you learn from history, is they just burned it down and try to get rid of it in every way possible, because history is his story, which is the victor's story. So that's why you have now a dilemma, because people are saying secret societies are bad, but sometimes it's not really secret societies. It's what I like to call mystery schools or secret schools. So then the question comes into being, why are they coming out now? Why is this information, why is this knowledge coming out now? And it's because Showtime is coming. Things are coming near. And now it's about time that people need to be awakened, and now it's about freedom of thought. And propaganda is not being as powerful as it is before. And now we have people can have the freedom to choose what they want to hear. You know, we don't have everyone going to the same church community. The internet has made it beautiful, where everyone can do their own research if they really want the research. It's free, and then no one will feel bad about it. And then we know this also goes into the archons, because a lot of times people like to talk about the archons. And when they talk about the archons, and if you don't know what the archons are, they're basically a concept that was founded in Gnosticism. And it's basically talking about the powers that be that want to keep us in control. And the reason I want to talk about this, because most people try to focus on external forces like the reptilians, and do not want to look at how we're being controlled in our everyday life through our health insurance, food, information that we're being told, our spirituality, things that keep us basically separated and keep us at the energy of fear. Because if you realize the plan all along is divide and conquer, and then try to like demonize anything that tries to give you power. So sometimes it's good to be like, why is it fear all the time, you know? So what happens is a lot of times if you look at this, you can see like, here's Earth, that's where we're supposed to be at. The upper world is basically the upper part of the tree of life. Obviously, if you look at the top, it has God divided into duality, death and light, darkness and light, vigilance and sleep. But there's always a divine spark within you. The archons didn't want you to get higher. So we are basically supposed to be more in control of like the planetary energies. We're supposed to be more in control of the elements of Earth. And then that's it. And once we get back ourselves in line with the planetary energies, and the planetary energies, once you realize all it has their as above, so below, they have their examples down here on Earth, like Saturn has Saturn herbs, Jupiter has Jupiter herbs, you got gems that have Mercury herbs. You have all different types of the representations up there, down here, so we can work with them. Which also make you think, if aliens were actually helping us, then we should have alien herbs too. like Pleiadian herbs and reptilian herbs, right? But we don't. But what happens is we got disconnected from the planets, but then we have the central computers. Then we have the humanity, and then we have races, and then we have religion, then we have countries, then we have cities, families, individuals. There's a lot of things that are on top of just the basic earth that we're supposed to conquer that has kept us controlled. So a lot of times when people try to look at things like, oh, it's the reptilians, it's like, let's stop looking externally and look at internally and how our life is being controlled right now. Because when you look externally, you will always put, it's easy to just put the blame on something else instead of looking at how we are being manipulated in our current form. And also, the world of dreams, which is the astral realm and where the astral aliens are, is a byproduct of the physical. But not all are there. So what happens is a lot of times people put so much focus on the astral dreams or reptilians, but I'm like, that's just a byproduct. And it's a byproduct of our consciousness. Once you get your mental body in focus and you start talking to your higher genius, that stuff can't even bother you anymore because they only have a consistency of maybe 2 or 3 elements. We have 4 to 5 elements, so we're a little bit more stronger because we can transcend past the 6th dimension. They can only go up to the 4th or 5th dimension, so that's why they only talk about it. So that's like basically something to think about. So when you realize that, you know, there's definitely similarities in spirituality that we have to focus to. Everything shouldn't be divide and conquer. You know, we have qualities that are good and bad of us, and we have to learn how to basically transmute our mind, body, and soul. And then from there, we can hopefully refine ourselves, keep our energy vibrating at that solar energy like Solomon. And then hopefully when they talk about the golden age, was talking about gold, we become a part of that golden age because we're resigned with that frequency as opposed to just talking about it in theory, which is going to take a lot of work and a lot of understanding. So that's my quick video. I hope you like it, and I'll see you in my next.